In Oklahoma, a state panel is recommending reparations for the survivors of the 1921 race riot in Tulsa. But the commission did not say how much should be paid or who was responsible. Whites destroyed the community of Greenwood, called Black Wall Street. The commission says perhaps as many as 300 people lost their lives.
Total destruction and heart-rending to see everything that you had gone for good.
Here to discuss the panel's decision and the likelihood of reparations is the author of the legislation creating the Tulsa Race Riot Commission, Oklahoma State Representative Don Ross. Welcome to Lead Story.
And thanks for inviting me.
What is the likelihood of the legislature actually approving the commission's recommendations? I know two of the state panel members, two of the lawmakers on the panel, said it would be unlikely.
Well, first of all, I have to believe when the final report is written that if the commission tells a compelling story that I think exists, that it will change the attitude of Oklahomans and thus the attitude of the legislature. There was a poll taken that said 57% of Oklahomans did not favor reparations. That's without information. It says to me that 43% either favored them or were indifferent. So with a compelling report, those statistics could very well change.
Is the case different, though, because there are actual survivors of this terrible event still alive now?
I don't think so. I think reparations in the state of Oklahoma has been written down as a black thing, irrespective that whites lost business and whites were killed, and it's kind of like a gun at the head. I don't think that makes a difference.
No, I mean, is this case stronger, though, because there are actual survivors?
From my view, yes, but the legislature has to make that decision, and that's the prevailing attitude, I suspect, at this time.
Just for the sake of our audience, there may be some people who don't know the background. What really prompted all this?
A black Shoeshine boy, he's about 16, was in an elevator, bumped a white woman. She screamed and called it rape. He was arrested. There was a story in the daily newspaper to lynch a nigger tonight. A white mob gathered at the courthouse. There had been a number of lynchings, and another community had been burned down in Dewayne nearby, and they vowed that it never happened in Tulsa. So they went down there to protect him. A shot rang out, a white was killed, the police deputized the mob, and the assault on the African-American community was on.
Representative Ross, most Americans have been taught that the first time Americans were placed in internment camps was during World War II. Most Americans were taught that the first time that a neighborhood in this country was bombed from the air happened in Philadelphia many, many years later. Is that true?
Absolutely not. 6,000 innocent African Americans were placed in concentration camps and could not leave that camp until they had the approval of some white. It has been confirmed by the commission that airplanes were used. Survivor says 5 bombs were dropped. They were shot upon. So Billy Mitchell didn't drop the bomb on that ship in Atlantic to July of 1921. Tulsa, the African-American community, were bombed in June of 1921.
My high school guidance counselor, Hazel Hackett, back in Tuscaloosa, grew up in Tulsa, and she told me she was 9 years old at the time. What kind of stories did you hear growing up about this?
I heard Wilhelmina Howell talk about her uncle, A.C. Jackson, called by the Mayo brothers as the best surgeon in America, surrendering to the deputized police and being shot. I heard Rosalie Nelson, my Sunday school superintendent, tell me about her nephew being drawn from a back of a Seymour Williams walking through his town before it was burned down and being placed in concentration camp. He saw it as a conspiracy to move blacks from their homes while the looters could get in. Because many of the pictures that you've used, the black community was still standing as the National Guards marched them to the concentration camp. The burning and the looting came after those armed blacks were arrested.
So isn't it the case, so this is only one of many, many incidents of this sort that occurred in the United States?
John Hope Franklin, who's been my friend and mentor, the noted historian, incidentally from Tulsa, has written that from, I think, 1909 in Atlanta to about 19 30 in Sherman, Texas. That may have been as 40 as many of these that equally are erased from history. I understand the good citizens of Helena, Arkansas are looking into their disturbance as we speak.
Representative Ross, in the state of Oklahoma, you have a black representative in Congress, J.C. Watts. What help is he giving you in this effort?
Well, J.C. remains silent, and that's kind of unusual because generally when there's a national cause, when he can raise his voice, he speaks out, but I guess this isn't conservative enough for my good friend J.C. Watts.
While the panel did not come up with a total package cost for reparations, the panel did recommend, I believe, giving $150,000 for each survivor. Is that correct?
No, not really. And I agree with the panel's recommendation that this is a decision that will be made by the legislature. It will not be made this year, but it should be made. What they used, it was a Rosewood guideline. They recommended that descendant survivors be given $20,000.
This is Rosewood in Florida, another town that
was burned down. And incidentally, Rosewood would have been a neighborhood in this community. Rosewood offered living survivors, I think, $20,000, and descendants of those survivors are a max of $150,000. And the commission, in its earlier recommendation, offered that whatever reparation were offered to follow the Rosewood model.
Could we come back to Tulsa at the time right before the riot began? That was one of the strongest, most vibrant black communities any place in the United States, was it not?
It was tagged by Booker T. Washington when he was there in 1913 as the Black Wall Street of America, the Negro Wall Street of America. And in his remarks, when he dedicated the school, his name, the school I graduated from, he told blacks pretty much to work hard, stay in their place, and the whites would appreciate them. So blacks did what whites wanted to do. They pulled themselves up by the bootstraps, and they stayed in their place, and they prospered as he said they would. But that was not enough for that community, who fell into much jealousy at the success of the Black Wall Street of America.
What has been the response of the survivors to the commission's report so far? I understand some were in favor of reparations, some not.
Well, I think the vote was 9-2. There are two legislators who didn't think the state was culpable.
But the survivors, their reaction?
Oh, I think it's pretty much unanimous among survivors. But I think where they are is I know all of them, and they're pleased that the story's been told, and they can easily endorse reparations. But they're more into that the next generation be able to profit from whatever comes from it. I think it's unanimous.
Representative Ross, in South Africa, where they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, they sought not only to assess the truth, but also to assess blame. Why did you not attempt to do that in Oklahoma?
Well, I think that is still a question to be answered by the commission. I hope the commission will assess blame. I think it's no doubt that the city of Tulsa is very much culpable in that they deputized the police mob, as Walter White told the story, the former executive director of the NAACP, in his story, The Eruption of Tulsa in 1921. I think the state is equally culpable because the National Guard only arrested blacks. They marched through jeering white crowds in their neighborhoods.
Representative Ross, very quickly, when can we expect the final report of the commission and then the vote?
There, I have a bill before the legislation now to extend the life of the commission to report every 30 days until that riot report is completed. And at that time, I will petition my government for whatever recommendation it makes.
Oklahoma State Representative Don Ross, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks again for inviting me.
Still ahead in Closer Watch, an update on the trial of the four